Hey, special educators, this is Jennifer. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be very quick. I want to share some back to school tips and a pep talk. Now, this isn't back to school in the traditional sense like August or September, but instead, this is returning to the classroom after some type of extended break. So, if you are watching this in real time, it is January, it is freezing outside, but you might be thinking, great, Jennifer, this would have been really helpful earlier in the week when we returned to the classroom. And I do apologize. However, I think these tips would be helpful anytime you need a quick classroom reset, after a break, or even after a long weekend. Now, I'm showing a blog post here. I'm not going to read it to you. I will link it if you want to get more of these details, but I wanted to get right to the tips and share my own experience and why I wrote this blog post. Now, one of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way was knowing what to expect from my students in my classroom when we were coming back from even just a long weekend. I was one of those special educators who was always like looking for that fresh start. Rough morning, okay, after lunch and recess, let's get a fresh start and finish up our day strong. I really did this on the weekends as well, and especially in a big break, like winter break. And you know what? It was always sort of a letdown because even though I kind of came in ready to go and like build on our successes, let's keep moving forward, fresh start, new year, my students didn't necessarily share my enthusiasm. Many times my students were just really tired. Maybe their routines just got switched up. I noticed that they were sleepy, like actually sleeping, and they were always really hungry. I don't know what goes on, what time lunch is on a regular day. I know that when I'm at home, like the schedule gets all off track, and I believe it happens for my students as well. So they're asking for lunch at 9:30 in the morning, and they're kind of grumpy. It was always a little bit of a letdown. If we returned on a Monday, it might have taken all the way to like Wednesday or Thursday before we kind of found our groove again. So here's my tips to make it happen a little bit smoother and to reset our expectations of what to expect. And it looks like a lot of tips, right? And I'm going to explain them as I go. You don't have to do all of them, but I will make it a little bit of a priority list as we go through them. Number one, absolutely plan on refreshing your routines. So, reminding your students what the routines are, you're kind of creating that safe space again. If their routine was off, that could have been a lot of fun over a break, but it's also a little bit unsettling. Most of us, even though we'd love to say we're super spontaneous, we often thrive with a bit more structure. So do not worry if you feel like you're going backwards and refreshing these routines, and it's not going to be boring for your students. It may be reassuring, and it's super important. Now, I will say also, if your routines were not really strong to begin with, they were super breaking down before break, it's okay to add new routines, nothing complicated. I always think simple is best. You can add on as you need to, but it's a good time to start a brand new routine too. Get that fresh start. So, routines, routines, routines. If that's the only thing you do on your first day back, you are still ahead of the game. Now, one really great idea is to have some type of community meeting, like a morning meeting, even if you don't traditionally have that in your resource room setting. It could look like a slideshow where you're just reviewing the schedule, what's coming up today. I know that I am one of those planners, which I'm sure is not a huge shock, but I like to know what's coming up. When I know what's coming up, I actually can relax a lot more rather than like wondering like, am I going to be here for an hour, or am I going to be here for 3 hours, or are we making a big switch in 5 minutes? If you give a age appropriate outlook of what's going to happen the day or the week, that can be really reassuring to your students so that they just know what to expect. Now, at this morning meeting, you could refresh your routines with a slideshow. You also, if you didn't want to do that, you also could just have some type of read aloud book. I know I worked with younger students, so that is what would be really appropriate. My students just tend to get into the groove. We do read alouds every single day, so it's just adding like, oh, this is a familiar routine. I'm listening to a story and it's enjoyable and I'm part of this community. Now, in addition to morning meetings, You also want to reconnect with individual students. Now, if you are looking at a classroom of 25 students or maybe 10 students on your caseload, you may be thinking, thanks for the pressure. I get to reconnect individually. What in the world? Like, what's going to be happening in my classroom as I'm focusing in on one student? But it can be really fast. It can be a greeting your child or your student by name at the door. Welcome back. I'm so glad to see you. I'm not going to go real in depth about break. I had that fresh start feeling still, even if I'm setting myself up. I still want to think moving forward. I'm glad to see you. Today's going to be a great day. Checking in with a student even in the hallway. That could be less than a minute. Checking with a student in doing a quick assessment, like, oh, let's do these vocabulary words together. And that way you just have a little bit of attention on an individual student, and then you can give some positive feedback. If you have a small group of 6 students at your table, you could just do a quick check-in. Everyone's got their morning work or something that they're working on, and you can quickly lean in and reconnect with your students. Very important. Same idea with your families. Now, again, you're thinking, okay, great. How am I going to call everybody the first day? Definitely not recommending that. But if you know some families to check in with, you may want to send that text or whatever their preferred communication is. Welcome back. Do you need anything? What I liked to do was always have a set of some type of one-page newsletter, whether you're sharing it on Class Dojo, sending it through email, or sending it in your students' backpacks. But it could just be a welcome back. Here's my contact information. So glad, excited for this upcoming month or whatever you want to do. You can always pre-plan those and just have them ready. I have a set of 6 of these letters, and I use them and reuse them every year. I can just open it up, edit if I need to, or just hit print. All right, so the next ones I'm going to group together: revisit objectives and review IEP goals. So revisiting previously mastered objectives. This is just smart. If you are on a roll before break, please manage your expectations that you may need to revisit some of those things. Even if your students were complete rock stars, you may still want to revisit some of those objectives. Let them experience a quick win. Don't be alarmed if it seems that everyone forgot everything. Here's my infamous story. When then this is actually back to school in August. I had a student leave the resource room setting in June, reading CVC words and identifying some of the sight words to put together some 5-6 word sentences. Amazing, right? Decoding. And when they returned in the August, and I did just the quick letter sound correspondence, let's have some quick wins. And they did not seem to know any of their letters, possibly not really be able to write their name anymore, those types of things. Absolutely a freak out session on my behalf. But you know what? Within a week or two, not only did those basic skills return, but they also matched where they were when they left in June. So same idea after an extended break. You definitely want to spiral in those previously mastered objectives. You're going to be so happy you did versus getting into the new content. And I understand if your school, your curriculum, the pacing guide is pushing the new content, but you're going to get a lot further with that new content after you get some quick wins with that previous objectives. Same thing with reviewing IEP goals. This is a good time to say, here's where we've been, here's where we are now, and where we're going. That would be really exciting for students, and it's age appropriate. I might say, here's what we're going to be doing this week if I'm working with really young students. Maybe you want to say, this is what we're going to be doing in January. Maybe you're working with students who can handle, this is what we're doing this quarter or this semester, kind of building a little bit of excitement. Now, the next one is input from coworkers. And I never hear people talking about this, but coworkers can give you so much information. And this is that your co-teachers, general education teachers, related service providers, and you might be in a situation where you guys are work wives or work husbands or BFFs, or you may not be in that situation and thinking, no thanks, I'm just not going to do that. I would love for you to get some kind of input of what they're doing the first days, the first week back from that extended break, because that can help your plans. If they are doing like non-routine activities, like maybe it's a New Year's activity the first week back in January, maybe it's, I don't know what it could be, it's something from spring break. It could be something that's not routine, but it's more thematic. Well, that would be really helpful to know, because then maybe in your resource room setting, you could be doing more of those basic skills. I never want to be doing the exact same thing. That to me would be kind of not keeping our students on a routine. Like if they're doing a huge project, I'm probably not going to do a huge project. If they are doing nothing and they're like back to basics, maybe I will put some kind of thematic spin on our basic routines. It's just really great to know what is happening and what our students are going to be experiencing. And that brings me to the next one, which is classroom celebrations, which probably seems like it's contradicting everything I've said so far about routines. But what we did for celebrations was often like our sensory bin would change to a winter theme if it's in January. Our basic centers or task boxes would get maybe a Arctic animal theme in January. Something like that could be the classroom celebration. Picking out winter themed books, having your students help choose the winter themed books. Things like that could feel like something special and something to look forward to. All right, so far I've shared 8 tips. They weren't in exact order, but I am going to say this bonus tip, tip number 9, is the most important. Focusing on SEL, social emotional learning, not just your students, but also yours. This is the time to help our students feel like they are welcome in the classroom setting, they are safe, they are secure, they are respected, they are included, and that goes for you as well. Check in with these things. If that's not in place, none of these other things are really going to have an impact. You can keep going with that new content and all of those new things, but it's going to fall short if that SEL is not there. So making sure that is a priority. Hopefully over the break or the long weekend, you had a chance to fill your cup back up, but please watch out for yourself. I know you're already watching out for your students, but don't forget about you either. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you. I read a lot, well, I didn't read it. I talked about these tips, but if you want to check these out and read more details, save it, bookmark it for anytime you come back from a break. You just need a little bit of a pep talk. It'll be there for you. All right, I will put this blog post in the description on this video. Be sure to hit subscribe because I will be back with more videos, and let me know if there's any special requests. All right, thanks so much for watching. Take care.